Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today, we have a futuristic fantasy novel. It's called The Cassidy Chronicles by author Adam Gaffen. Thank you for joining us by Skype from Colorado. How are you
Thank
today?
you. I'm wonderful. The skies are blue and sunny today, and it's supposed to be up to about 75 degrees.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, how did the whole spy, assassins, how did all of that work together?
I think this was inspired by Robert Heinlein's Friday. The idea of a courier who is hired to get a package from point A to point B, no matter what. And I wanted to put that in her past. I wanted to put her as having moved forward and moving on with her life. That was something she did, not something she does. So getting back into the light because she has to is a little bit of conflict.
And the world building was really realistic in the whole way that you fractioned up the United States, and the personalities of the way it broke up was really well done. So where did you get your inspiration for that?
That's an idea I've been playing with since the early 90s. I actually have a map that I had drawn out, whole future history of a couple hundred years of how it broke up. Now, I didn't refer to that directly when I was writing Cassidy Chronicles, but it was definitely in the back of my head because I had been working on it for so long.
Wow. How many books are going to be in the series?
No idea. It's like I said, it's their story. So as long as they have stories to tell me, then I'm going to be putting out books. I'm currently working on the fifth one, which is going to tie up one of the major arcs that's been going on since book 2. But beyond that, we'll see where it goes.
There's quantum mechanics. What's your background?
Currently, I'm a philosophy major at Arizona State University. So when I'm looking and writing about these things, I'm having to do a bunch of research ahead of time. I've done a bunch of reading across, science and history and religion and all the traditional liberal arts studies. Mm-hmm. But for the specifics, I'm fortunate to have a bunch of really good friends who have some of that knowledge, and I can tap into them and say, "Oh, Travis, got a question."
Oh, that's good. Well, it really comes out in the way that the whole thing unravels. It was really well done. You weren't sure what happened with one of the characters for a little while, but then you started to realize who was behind what. It came out really nice.
Thank you. That was actually the biggest stumbling point in the books, because I started writing this 8-9 years ago, and the first 2/3 of the book came very quickly because it's a very straightforward story. It's an adventure. It's a whodunit. And there's a betrayal in there. But I had to figure out who did the betraying and why. So I had to do that before I could write it. Mm-hmm. And that took several years to percolate. And then suddenly it was, oh, that makes sense. And then I was able to go back and finish the.
What about the fighting scenes? Where did you get your knowledge and to put into those scenes? Because those are really well done.
Oh, thank you. I would say that it probably comes from my reading because I've been reading since I was tiny little, and I am still a voracious reader. I think if you walked around my house right now, you'd find half a dozen books that I have going right now. So in reading all those books, I've read a whole bunch of combat scenes and fighting scenes, and it stuck.
See, I'm the kind of reader when I read it, if it's not realistic, like I'll try it out the way that it's explained and see if my body actually can move in those directions. And then I'll be like, okay, all right, take it with rest. But so they were really well done and believable in that sense. But the espionage and all of that, what drew you to that? Was there anything going on in your life at the time in the news?
Let's see. So I wouldn't say that it was drawn from reality particularly. I've always been a James Bond fan. I remember watching them on the TV with my granddad. So there's always been an element of that I've enjoyed, and I think I just wanted to incorporate that. And it was a great way to give Kendra some mystery, this. She isn't exactly who she appears to be. She is who she is now. The person she presents as is who she wants to be, but she has been somebody else.
So, what other influences develop those characters?
Cass is a little bit of the naive scientist trope, but she's got more of a background. She's got more of a real life grounding than the trope would allow for.
Mm-hmm.
For example, her capoeira skills. And she explains it by saying, "Look, I'm a single woman living in Los Alamos. I need to be able to do something to defend myself, and I do this because I enjoy it. It looks like a dance." So
that was good too. Oh. And were you planning to write a series when you wrote it, or was it going to be just one book?
Oh, no, this was planned to be one book. Tell the story and then move on. And what happened was I got to the afterwards, the what am I going to write next? And I had this idea and I started writing it. I got about 5,000 words or so into it. And suddenly it just didn't feel right. The universe it was in wasn't working. So I had the idea, if I drop this into the Cassidy universe and bring those two characters back in, suddenly it all made sense. A group was looking for a solution, and they were able, and Cass and Ken are able to provide the solution. And since then, it just continued. Like I said, apparently, Cass and Ken had more stories they wanted me to tell.
So did you watch a lot of those 007 movies?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen just about all of the James Bond movies.
Excellent. Why the Bugatti?
Okay, the Bugatti was definitely pulled from personal experience. At the time, my kids and I were watching Top Gear, and they would have the Bugatti on every so often, and it's just a beautiful car. And it's this hugely capable, technologically impressive, there's nothing better out there at the time that I was writing. And I thought, okay, it's got classic lines. Kendra is obsessed with this time period, mostly our pop culture, but she'd certainly be familiar with the cars of the time. And it would just make sense for her to find this, and it's a wreck. It needs repairs. So it's her passion project, and she fixes it up.
Have you ever ridden in one?
No. Don't have any friends who have a $5 million car.
Oh, okay. That would have added to it. I want to hear about it. I mean, the scenes where they were using that car were really classically well done, kept you into the chase. You really do a good job with winding up the whole chase scenes, and just the whole story and what was behind it and who was behind it and the mechanics that worked with it. And I thought it was really funny that you took the worst parts of like Vegas, Houston, and why? Why did you pick those areas?
Houston was chosen because it's the center of space industry, as it were.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that makes sense.
And since Ayanna Cass works for Heavy Lift Corporation, which is currently the company that's lifting payloads into orbit, it makes sense that their headquarters are in Houston. Las Vegas, it's never really felt like a part of the United States. It's always felt like its own thing because that's the way it is. We've gone to Vegas plenty of times, all of which has been, by the way, after I wrote the book. I had never been to Vegas before, when I was writing this book.
Ah, so just on innuendos.
Innuendos, research, people who have been there. But since it has this reputation of being separate, one of the things that I had done in dividing the country up is Vegas said, all right, the rest of you can go your own way. We're going to do our thing, and anything goes. And that's the vibe I kept. It's kind of the Mos Eisley from Star Wars, which I think was also modeled on Las Vegas. So it's now gone full circle because I modeled my Las Vegas kind of on the Mos Eisley, the smugglers, and anything goes.
Okay. What about their hideout, the Cassidy hideout? How did you develop that?
I needed Kendra to have someplace out of the way where they could just slow down and take a couple days, not be chased. And I was just poking around the internet and discovered the Hoosac Tunnel and figured, how can I turn this into something a century later? Okay, so it's now abandoned, and she turned part of it into, I don't know if you want bunker, but it's definitely her hideaway.
Yeah, it was really futuristic, the way that you did it, and a lot of the little things that they had. I like the refrigerator setup thing. That was cool. And was there anything particularly hard to write? Any scene that you had trouble with the most?
The details that you've noticed, the details in the fight, making sure that the bodies would act that way, that was challenging because I was running through my mind, okay, what would this look like? And the whole, is this physically possible? Okay, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Take that in, take that out, change this. So whenever it gets particularly detailed,
Mm-hmm.
those would slow me down because I would dig in and get the research and figure out, does this actually work? When Cass is trying to describe to Kendra about the throughput for the laser, that's all real technology.
Mm-hmm. Really?
It took quite a bit of digging. Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
it's all real technology. It's just not anything that we apply right now. That's why I consider this hard science fiction. It's all based on what's possible. It's based on what we know now, and it's just a matter of refining the techniques.
Very cool. Why did you write this series to begin with? What message did you hope to get out?
Each book has its own message. In the first book, it's Kendra trying to find her family, her found family, as it were. The second book is Kendra learning how to deal with responsibility. At the end of the book,
Mm-hmm.
they've come into some money, which 100 years from now, money still equals power, which means they have the opportunities to do things instead of just dream about them. Well, Kendra's dream involves a lot of responsibility, and she learns that in the second book. The third book, Measure of Humanity, Kendra has some of her past come back, and it's talking about how segments of the population get minimized and dehumanized. And the fourth book, I start talking about taking the next step. You've recognized your responsibilities. You've chosen your family. You've recognized and fought against the dehumanization.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you going to do now? Are you just going to complain about it, or are you actually going to try to change things?
What age group did you gear it towards, the whole series?
I would say from teenagers on should be able to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't aim it towards any group in particular. I've left out a lot of the more graphic scenes simply because they don't move the plot forward. And that's the key.
Yeah, I thought you balanced that out well. There wasn't a lot of needless scenes. I like the other agents that came into play, and how they met was more realistic, and how each of them brought something to the table, to be a successful team. The teamwork was a big thing in it. I thought that was well done. It was fun. It was a good adventure.
Mac was such a fun character to write. My wife and I are just now watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She was a big fan. I never really watched it, but I knew enough about it. Somewhere in the back of my head, I think I must have modeled Mac a little bit on Willow,
mm-hmm.
the chatterbox computer expert.
Yeah, she was really cute.
But
I wasn't sure about her for a while. I thought she was going to be the bad guy. But But I really wasn't surprised when I found out who it was. But I was surprised that it took them so long to realize, and it was his own, it was that character's own fault that everything that happened to him happened afterwards. But it was just like that poetic justice. And it was funny that they didn't really realize it right away. You did a really good job spacing that out and having that part of it come out. It was like, wait.
I tried to drop little nuggets so that the reader can maybe figure something out, maybe see that something's coming. And the thing to remember, too, is that whole book, until the very end, is only about 2 weeks. You know, and then there's a gap at the end. It skips forward about a month or so to the final confrontation. But most of the book takes place within 2 weeks. And for the first chunk of that, they're just on the run. They're trying to stay alive, not figure out what's going on. So,
right, and you didn't leave us.
Be forgiven.
Well, you softened the cliffhanger, which was really good. You gave us what they were all going on to do next. Where they ended up, who got what job. That part was really good because then we didn't, it wasn't so much of a rush to get the second book. We knew that if you weren't done with it, we would kind of forgive you.
The first book was written as a standalone. And one thing that I don't like as a reader, if I've gotten invested in the characters, and if I've read the whole book, I've gotten invested in characters, is the author ending the book and leaving things so ambiguous that anything could have happened. I want to give at least a little bit of that closure so they know what's going on. And I refer back to that even now because it set up the rest of the books.
Oh, that's good. So we don't know how many books are going to be in the series. Are there any other series that you're working on?
No, not at the moment. I have little side writing projects, but they're microfiction here and a short story there. Nothing really in the same universe.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite book growing up? What type of books did you like?
Oh, I was definitely science fiction. And I'd say growing up, depending on when you asked me, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is probably the one from the youngest to now that I still enjoy.
What is it about that book that you enjoyed?
Some of it's the ridiculous aspect. Here it is. It's Thursday at lunchtime, and somebody's trying to knock his house down. He's in his house. Arthur's in his house robe, lying in front of a bulldozer, and his friend comes over and says, I have to tell you the most important thing you've ever heard in your life. I have to tell you now, and I have to tell you in that pub. Why? Because you're going to need a very stiff drink. It's the everyman confronting the ridiculousness of reality.
Oh, okay. I can see how that might play into your novels.
Yeah, things I enjoy doing, putting those little Easter eggs, the little references to other pop culture, other books.
Yeah, that was really well done. Yeah, I like the whole setup. I enjoyed the adventure. I question at the beginning, I think I started to look more into you to question the authenticity of the characters and how they were going to develop. But getting into the second chapter, I saw that, you really took care to develop them. And it wasn't pretentious. It wasn't, pushing any issues. It was really well done. These were exciting people to hang out with and go on an awesome adventure with.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so book 5 is out now?
Book 5 will be out August 15th.
Ooh. And then how long are they in between now?
The subsequent books are pretty much back to back to back. They're continuous, but they're spread over a longer period of time. Right now, it's a span of 2 years from the beginning of book 2 to where I am in book 5.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, thanks
the
for
story's
sharing.
gotten bigger.
Well, thanks for sharing so much about what you do and how you created the Cassidy Chronicles. We're looking forward to more.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want to hang out with some really tough girls who can get over a lot of hurdles, the Cassidy Chronicles will definitely bring you along for a great ride.